I forgot that, like, for fourth grade math, you know, like, when you have a remainder, and you know how we usually supposed to keep going and add, like, a decimal zero? I forget you just put a remainder.
Everything in the world is not paper. Like, everything is literally
Ask him first, so he gives you a dollar for asking, and then sing.
Sing the question.
And if you want to go to course, I'll ask him, and he gives away $8.
We're over here like.
I know.
We're also part of this.
What meeting? Oh, the big cards.
Yeah. I think that would be.
Cool. I actually hadn't thought about that. That's
I mean, it was so.
Let's pray.
And we'll be right underway again.
The what?
We'll philosophize a little and talk about early philosophy. Let's bow together. Father in heaven, with perspective and an eye toward where our ideas fit, with lots of ideas, we approach knowing and trying to figure out existence and us, ourselves, and you, and each other. Bless our efforts. In Jesus' name, amen. Wow, since we met last, it was 9 days ago. It was 9 days, is that right? 9 days ago. Yeah. So, because this class is a 4-hour class, and we meet 2 class periods every time we meet, in essence, we lost 4 class periods. We lost 4 entire class periods. There's been emails that have come out from the dean to the faculty saying, figure out how you're going to make that up and all that, see if you can extend class or meet on extra days or anything like that. I am reluctant to respond to that until figuring out what works best for you rather than what works best for just me. It's just one person, and my schedule is way more flexible than yours. I mean, I have plenty to do because I'm writing my dissertation, and I'm just a million behind, that's it. I mean, I always just am gonna be, there's a million things that should already be done that aren't done, that's all there is to it. But it doesn't fall on the clock or the calendar, my problem. First of all, as a group, would you be more interested in trying to find a time where we can make up the time together, or would you rather that I come up with something like stuff that would have been quizzes? I arranged something that you're gonna have to dig around in the readings to like do a worksheet or something instead of what we would have been doing, and then I just try to make it come up with something that we can rationalize is similar amount of time, or do you prefer that we actually try to extend class and meet times we weren't going to be meeting? That's that's kind of clear. So you'd rather have some sort of a take-home thing that puts you in the book a little bit to find the answers, that sort of thing, or in the lecture.
Well, there is also the option maybe, because this class is supposed to end at 3:40, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys would think it'd be a good idea to just extend class to like 4, maybe that would make up something.
Yeah, that's something that I could do, but because I have another class at 4 right here, and that's fine, but it all depends on you guys. That's the kind of thing that would, I don't mind, I'm here anyway. I'm gonna be standing here those minutes, and if you want me to rattle longer, if you want to rattle longer for the, how many ever days, that's fine. If you prefer having an additional take-home assignment instead of being here extra time, that's fine.
How rigorous is a take-home assignment?
Well, it would just be, the kinds of things. What I would do is make up like worksheets that have stuff that you have to fill in the blanks or explain, give a short answer kind of thing from the reading. And then we would take those things, make sure that after you turn them in, we all had the correct answers, and then they would add to our test and quiz what we would do. So I was going to give some. The 2 periods, the 4 periods that we met, my intention was, my own schedule, I had in mind to do quizzes during that time. And so what we would do is be generating potential quiz and test questions from these worksheets that I'll just grab from the books. Let me just put it this way, is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And rather than, then we'll just say, if I'm questioned, like they're looking at whether it's a real class and the number of minutes we're supposed to have to fit with other real schools and all that stuff, which happens. They audit things like that. They'll audit your syllabus and then they'll audit your grade book and that sort of thing. If that kind of thing happens, then I can just say, oh, well, I gave this many minutes of outside time, sort of, so it's guided instruction. If you're all right with that.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care, on the take-home stuff, I don't care if you do it as, get together and work on the answers and that sort of thing. If you simply, if we find that what you do is say, okay, you find number 1, you find number 2, and then just share it so that everyone's only doing 1, or 3 people are doing 1, and 3 people are doing 2, that would be considered academic dishonesty. I wouldn't like that. That would be heinous and egregious. So don't do that, please. Let's go then straight to checking in with our folk that have biographical stuff. Let me see your hand if you have biographical reports that you have spoken up. I want to do this. Not if you're ready, just let me see your hand if you spoke up for them. Okay, tell me now, put your hands up high so I can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about how many is it? Do we have more or somebody missing? You had 4, and we got 5 people's hands up. That's good. We're gaining. So I'm gonna put your hands up again. I just want to hear who you have. Naximenes. Dallas. The Cynics. Naximenes. Appearance. Okay. Are any of you, put your hand up if you're ready to do your thing. Okay, I'd like to do them in order, so let's look at those for definite on Tuesday. Can y'all be ready with your things on Tuesday? So then we can do them in the order that they contributed. Fair enough? Including, we'll do, because you're not ready with the pre-ride, you need until next Tuesday, right? So everybody clear that we're doing it on Tuesday? Presenters? Okay, I want to talk some more then about the issues that these folk were getting at. First of all, what we have about the pre-Socratics. I think the most astute and honest, intellectually honest scholars today would say that the stuff we have about the pre-Socratics is at least as much what we're kind of wishing they were saying and bringing our interpretation to a few fragments as it is real history. So please know that a lot of the things that we say about these people, including the biography material that you're going to report from Wikipedia or from wherever, a lot of that is not like it's not necessarily what really happened, but it helps in a rational way to help us create this picture of how we got to where we are. It is like almost all history. And this isn't a denigrating thing that I'm going to say. This is an elevated, this is an important thing that this word I'm going to use. Don't think that I'm putting it into the toilet and flushing it down when I use it. It's not pejorative. It's myth. A lot of this stuff is myth. For some of these people, there's discussion about whether they actually existed. That's true even of Shakespeare. Not one of our people, but what's that?
He said Shakespeare.
Yeah, before you said it.
He was saying that might be.
He deserves $1 for that. I think he deserves $5.
What a guy!
Wow, what a guy.
Or maybe, I don't know diddly squat about this, and I heard him say that, and it's like, oh, he looked me up, and I kind of said it. It could be that I heard it, and I said, oh, here's a good, no, you're right on. That is so true. Theologians deal with that. Theology majors, when you take a course at seminary or even here in a book of the Bible, there will be rigorous discussion about whoever it is we're saying wrote the book, or even existed. So we need to, before we say, okay, studying about stuff is all just a waste of time crap, before you say that, recognize that the standard of factuality, like admitting something into, yeah, this is a thing, instead of just, thinking about purple unicorns or whatever. Know that everything we can know has that same amount of tentative, could be, kind of status. All the stuff you think, well, this is how it is. Other things are sort of iffy, but this is how it is. That's a very, very hard, a very challenging status to defend if you claim that anything this is the real deal. Because reality itself, well, what is it? What does it mean for something to be real? Somebody help me out here. What do you think of when I say, can you define for me and explain what it is for something to be real? Yes?
You can interact with it.
You can interact with it. Now, by interact with it, do you mean you can detect it with your senses? Okay. How important is that pencil to you?
I'm not too attached to it.
Could I buy it?
Yeah.
So that it's mine? One first dollar?
2?
It's her pencil. If I'm successful at causing your perception of this pencil to make it look like it's flexible, and it is a little bit flexible, but if you can get a look at it kind of looking like it's bending. You mostly can do this. You played with this in 3rd grade, right? You sucked at it, but you got a little better at it in high school. Somebody could do it, and you're going, I wish I was that coordinated. But it's not really that flexible. It's an optical illusion. In fact, to say that when we get something with our senses, that it's real, because we got it with our senses, it perpetuates the notion of our false confidence in our notion of reality, of the status of, okay, well, this is a real thing and other things are play like things. If you right now think in your mind of, you could make up a place that doesn't exist in your mind. Can you do that? Make up a place, picture it. Now, in this place, gravity works backwards. According to everything's mass, the proportion of the two masses, they repel instead of attract, according to the square of their distance. So it's the inverse of what gravity is. Instead of being attractive, gravity works the same except that it's repulsive. Can you picture that? Everything, the bigger it is, the harder it pushes things away instead of drawing it in. It'd be kind of tough for us to stay grounded on the planet. But you can picture it, right? But it's not real. Or is it real? If you can picture it, if you can do business with it, and if you can interact with it and try to figure out what it would be like to be there, and let's picture also that all the grass, instead of being mostly green, like because of the chlorophyll, let's pretend that chlorophyll, instead of being green on our planet, is pink. It's kind of salmon-colored pink, okay? Can you picture that? So the grass and the trees, anything that needs to photosynthesize is having to rely on wavelengths that are sort of washed out red end of the spectrum. Can you picture it? You see red trees and red grass and all of that stuff. And you're having the experience of it. If you close your eyes, you can make it really vivid. You can walk on it. You can imagine what it would feel like to step on it. It shouldn't feel any different, should it? It shouldn't feel any different at all. Oh, except, wait a minute. It's pushing you away. The earth is pushing you away. How are you going to get close enough? You have to hold on and like get a hold of some handles or something. We have to, everywhere on the planet, we have to put like stair rails and handles and like poles, ski poles sticking up that are actually embedded in the ground and have a handle, and you're kind of trying to keep from you can have this nonsense experience. Now, I'd like you to pretend in your mind, forget all of that, the pinkness and the inverse gravity and everything. Picture that where it is you slept last night. You're back there right now. You're back there right now. Touch your pillow in your mind. Touch your pillow. The same sort of movie screen that's got all your senses, and some senses that we don't count among the 5 involved, that you're using to interact in your mind with where you slept last night. Or turn and look at another person really quickly. Just pick somebody in the classroom besides me. Look at somebody, look at them, and try to memorize their face, and then close your eyes and put your head forward again with your eyes closed. Now, if you need to look again because you kind of lost the image, then look again and then close your eyes. Okay? Now, you can even look at them and close your eyes and then look at them and close your eyes and keep doing it, and then until you've got that in, can you experience the image in your mind? Recognize that memory, that you're using that memory of those stimuli that create that visual image of the person. You're using that memory that on your screen the same way as if you right now try to picture your parents. or your brother or sister, or whoever it is you got a thing for right now. Whoever it is, picture them. Dress them any way you like, except that way. After all, this is class. Stay with it. Recognize that when you're currently having the experience, or it seems like you are, it's the same mechanism. It's just not as long ago that you took in the stimulus. Recognize also that the light had to travel to your retina, had to bounce off of them and travel to your retina, and then it had to be processed and travel to, it had to get to the occipital lobe, then it had to go to a secondary visual processing, and then had to go to an association cortex.
So are you talking about like reality is perception?
I'm
Because-
talking about perception.
So the idea
Yes.
that like, but it's still reality though, right? Because we see stars that don't exist anymore because it's taken that long
Good point.
for light to travel here. But
Perfect.
I still see
And
stars.
me, it took time from the light, for the light from me to get to you. Less time,
But you still exist.
but it's real time, right?
Yeah.
The time did go by and it's not zero.
Right.
And I could back away or go stand on a ridge and you can use a telescope or whatever. But it's still, you're not seeing me as at the time that I'm existing.
I mean, there's like no delay.
There is a delay.
But if I'm already caught up to where we are, then there's no delay.
How could you catch up?
Because as you're
By the time the light from me gets to you,
Mhm.
I've changed.
Right, but you're still, but that light is still coming at the same speed. So now
Yes.
we are.
You're in sync.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
You are in sync, yes. And the strange thing is that light, even though time is passing at different rates for each of us, depending on how fast we're going and where we're located and all of that, everything has its own time frame, and it doesn't relate to other people's time frame, except we all relate the same to the same light. It's really bizarre. There's no logical way to explain it. There is no logical way to explain it. We can do math formulas, but common sense, or our ability to conceive of it and go, oh yeah, I get it, I'm with that. No, we're not. And we can't be. Nobody can be. So, anything we're perceiving, just like light coming from 100 billion light years away, stars or systems that no longer exist that we're looking at, the state that you're perceiving from me is not the state I'm in now. So that was some representation of something from a while ago. In fact, if what we did was back me away a little bit and put it like a heater, like a parabolic, like shock heater on the floor pointing up, so the heat waves are going through. As I moved, and the heat waves, when we blow a little fan, the heat waves would just, I would it would be kind of monkey mirror from time to time, you know, like a fun house. Not only that, each of us has slightly different lens characteristics in the lenses in our own eyes. You take one person's lensing and another person's lensing, they're not the same. In fact, no two lenses are the same. You say, well, but it's pretty cool. But we're talking about, is it exact or is it not exact? It is either exact or it isn't, and it can't be. Not only that, I have no idea what it looks like to you or what it seems like to you in your mind when you take in of a certain wavelength, photons, and you perceive them to be green like in a leaf or the grass. I have no idea what that is in your head. It might not be in your head either. I think of it as we all think of it kind of like it's in your head. But we also know that a lot of what we perceive as thinking and feeling, that we think of as taking place in our head, is actually scattered throughout our nervous system and the biome in our belly. Not just in our head. Which is just bizarre. Is it not? And think about this. Inside of wherever you are, whatever it is you think of as being yourself, we all know that there's not just one of us in here, because you try to make a decision and stick to it, and then the jerk comes in later on and messes up your resolution to be like on Men's Health health and fitness cover or something, you know, it's never going to happen because we have somebody who comes in and hijacks our circumstance and, you know, and it controls our organisms, and then the next morning we're like, who was that? You know? Or something comes out of our mouth and we go, oh, I said it. I really just said that. I don't want to have said it. What the heck? It's like if you're thinking about something else, you go, well, I'm gonna really be nice to this person, you know, it's important to me. And then you're thinking about something else, they come and they say something, and you even while it's happening, you're going, am I really doing this? Have you ever done anything and then said, am I really doing this? How is it that this I shouldn't be doing this? And then you're doing it. Well, if you're saying, oh, I don't even want to be doing this, and then you see it going on, I mean, we have to start questioning the notion of self. Now, if there's more than one self, then does it matter which one of those selves is currently in the driver's seat and looking through the windshield that's seeing the thing? Would it maybe look different to another one of ourselves?
So, what media access, what makes something real? Is it because because I mean, whatever is real, are you saying it changes all the time and it doesn't stay the same? Like,
I'm going to answer your first question a little bit. It's only one way to answer it. What makes something real? That's up to you. What's your standard so that you're willing to call something real?
so it's nothing new to you?
Au contraire. Everything is real to me. Not nothing, but everything, including nothingness. And recall that that doesn't have to make sense.
Could that be the cause of a lot of like mental disorders or something like that? Or like
Excellent. Excellent.
No. I'm not asking specifically in you. I mean like generally in people.
It's worth asking
Like-
specifically about it. Because I'm a good case in point. I have this notion that all of the things that we call mental illness are just a certain extent of something that we all have to some extent. Even multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder with multiple personality, or few. Any of those things, anything. The autism spectrum, we all have obsessive compulsive things about us. We all obsess on some things. You ever get a stupid earworm? I mean, I could sing some horrible song for you and you can't get it out of your head, and then I can keep reminding you through class and you get a hate me for the next week. And then I could even post it online. Don't forget to think about drink Dr. Pepper, the joy of every boy and girl. It's the most original soft drink ever in the whole wide world. Barry Manilow gave us that earworm and it drove us crazy. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a stupid commercials like that. State Farm is there. Of course, if you lost your house in the fire, probably nowhere to be found, but they're somewhere. I don't know how they fit into reality, but a lot of people in England have been getting little notices saying, oh, by the way, your homeowner's insurance is canceled. Yeah, a lot of people that own homes that would kind of like to protect some, plus they have mortgages. So if the house burns and the thing would cost $700,000 to rebuild and you don't have insurance, you're in trouble. That also would probably make their house actually worth about nothing, because who would buy it if you can't insure the mortgage? Nobody can get a loan for it. But you're already stuck with a loan for it, and then you got your house. And so people on Angwinville on Facebook have been saying, hey, did anyone else get a cancellation notice for their homeowner's insurance? Oh, bummer. Reason? Too close to brush. They're going, whoa.
It's still a reality thing.
It is. What's real? Is it think about how real it seems when you buy a house. People go, oh, I can't believe this is real. I remember buying a house in Arizona. And my wife and I, after we went in to the title office and signed the papers, and it went into escrow, very short escrow, like 28 days or something, we went back to the car and we just said, is this real? Are we going to own this like half acre on on a trout stream, 2-story, 2,300 square foot, really nice place, you know, for $69,000. We really gonna own this? It didn't, and then when it closed, it was like, well, I own this house. I mean, I had this feeling of, this isn't real. It doesn't, I mean, I grew up like dog dirt poor. And the idea that I owned this nice house in the forest, you know, it was outrageous. So we had this, things don't feel real. Have you ever had something go really horribly? Really horribly? I mean, the worst time of your life so far, and then you go, when you're thinking about it, you go, this can't be real. But it is. And you go to sleep at night, you're kind of going, wait, is this real? You wake up the next morning and you've been dreaming vividly about it or something else, and then you have to actually put in some intentional effort to establish, wait, is this actually real? This can't be real. This can't be real. Anyone ever said that? It discombobulates our sense of what's real. Even though we've got the same sensory input for these horrible things, we're going, no, I don't want to give that real status.
That's fine.
In terms of mental illness, though, one of the kinds of mental illness you might be thinking of is the kinds of mental illness, for example, schizophrenia, where you have hallucinations. And the hallucinations can feel like something's crawling upon you, or you see things that are, I mean, you have to look at them and you go, I cannot distinguish between that and that. When that, one of them isn't there, you know? Like you're looking at somebody that you've known for a long time and they become triplets. And one of them likes you and the other one is trying to kill you. And you're going, wow, I can't distinguish which is which. Wonder which one is real. When your experience of them is indistinguishable. Now, do you believe that none of us have perceptions that seem 100% solid? They're just not happening? Here's the scariest part. Every perception we have, we're just making up. And the sensory information is just giving us some material to work with from expected patterns. It's all a hallucination. Are there things going on outside of us that our senses are detecting that we're constructing this image from? I think so, yes. But the image we're getting is a hallucination based on those things.
But at some point, if everyone's hallucinating the same thing, then it is reality, right? It's the same as us
Remember
being
how I
insane
answered her
and you
question?
not being in the place
Remember
you
how
were.
I answered her question?
Yeah.
What you're saying, if you put a question mark in the end, I'm going to say, if you say so.
The things can be verified, right?
You mean triangulated.
Right.
Let's just, for sake of discussion, say yes. If we could determine that we're all having an identical perception of something, then we would say, then that's our standard of real.
But even if we
Well, first
perceive
of all,
color
we-
differently, right? Like
First of
it's still
all,
gonna be red.
that's not possible.
Right.
And second, if it was, how would we know?
Exactly.
How would we know? We'd never know. So we would never be able to use that test to be sure that anything was real. What? It's not possible for us to have the same perception of a thing. Because it's not even in the same mind. Experimentation would say that we do know it. That nobody's having an identical experience of it. Because here's a let's just do it without even having to use phenomenology, without having to look at what people are actually perceiving. Let's just use logic. Shall we use our visual sense? That's well, we'll come to that. That's a good question. But taking it in reasoning from one thing, so it's sort of mathematically, but we'll come to defining logic. That's a very, very good question. But let's say we're going to use the visual sense. look at the visual sense and just say, is that identical? Because if it's not identical, if they're not having the same visual experience, then it's not the same experience. Even if the other senses are the same, visual's pretty important. But it's not the same collage of sensory input if they're having different visual experience, right? So you and I are looking at something occurring. How could we be looking at it from the same angle and the same distance? It's not possible. We can rule it out just by that. There's no way we're seeing the same angle. We have a different perspective of the same. Things don't look the same when you move and look at it from another angle. They did not see what you saw because they're not where you are. Even if you try to put their heads right next to each other, it's still not the same. It's off by a bit.
So how do you know when to accept like eyewitness testimony or stuff like that?
I am so skeptical of all eyewitness testimony that what I do instead is accept it all as having been a valid experience. Now, what that means for what actually took place, I'm still really open-minded about what actually means. But if you say you perceived a certain thing, and you're not obviously lying and showing all the signs of intentional deception, I'm gonna say I believe that's the case. Think about all the stuff in the news where everybody basically, in 90% of cases, it just depends on what color the person is, how they perceive. When you watch a video of some cop abusing somebody, there's no lack of video. There's just thousands of clips of people going in there and roughing somebody or killing them. Look at the comments under that YouTube footage or under that Facebook meme that starts going around. Look at the comments. You got people that are, it doesn't matter what was seen. They have a certain perspective. That's all they can see. I don't think they're lying. Now, having been a cop for a number of years, I look at a lot of those things and I hear people either defending the cops or denigrating the cops, and about 90% of what I hear is just imbecility from either side. It has nothing to do with determining, what went on there. You're saying things that don't make any sense at all, and you see a clip that's 12 seconds long, and they don't know what happened before, and it's not even good footage, or the things they criticize are things that really are probably above criticism. And the things that they think they're okay with, I'm looking at it going, the cops should go to prison. I don't think that it's just bigotry that different colored people, different cultured people, different neighborhooded people look at it and get a completely different. I think that it's legitimate what they're seeing. Even if I don't see it, I'm looking at it and going, if they are seeing that, then it's a thing. I'm going to give that 100% reality status. If somebody says, here's what I'm perceiving is going on. To not do that, ultimately, at the end of the day, is to make myself a judge of reality for other people. And then we can perpetuate abuse. That's just one example of something where the rubber really meets the road. We can perpetuate abuse. You've seen in the last week, since this jerk movie guy, whoever he is, I don't even know what his name is, somebody, that's the guy. He's a meme now because he's a toad and he sexually assaults and abuses people, apparently. And so people have been availing our culture of the opportunity of saying, do you have any idea how widespread it is for people to mistreat other people that way? Mostly women, but not only women. I've seen men say, yeah, me too. That's the thing, they're saying, me too. And all of these things that are being, and then people are describing, look at what happened to me, and they tell it in detail, and I read it, and I'm going, that's a thing? That's not even a thing. I mean, I've read some people's response to that when they say, me too, and they tell the story, and I'm looking and I'm going, how is that abusive? Some of it I honestly don't think is abusive. But they do. So I have to say, if they feel like they're being abused, that's a thing. I'm not going to say, just because to me it doesn't appear real, if it appears real to them, I'm going to go, there's a thing, there's an issue. I'm not going to just say, oh, that's not real. But that requires, it's not automatic for me. I'm going to have to do on purpose what I consider an aspect of intellectual humility. Just because something looks to me like it's not real, and it looks very real to someone else, or vice versa. Something looks real to me, and people are going, that's not a thing. I have to then say, like you were saying, well, what if multiple people look at it and say, let's invert that and say, what if multiple people look at it and they don't see the same thing? That's different than claiming that you do see the same thing. Not seeing the same thing is acknowledging the difference. And when you positive and negative things, they're not always mirror image on the other side of the logical equation, right? So a not operator does not just change all the signs.
How do you create laws then? If okay, like Title IX laws or stuff like that, like if one person sees that thing as abusive, are you just gonna like be like, okay, let's play it off, or do you?
That's a
do you
huge
punish
question.
everybody who is accused?
How do they create those laws? I don't, because I'm not a lawmaker. If I was tasked with having to deal with making those laws and policies, or I was a judge to interpret them, I would have to retool and figure out how that's done. I'm not skilled at that. I don't have that background, but I would get it. But you and I each have some idea of how bills are written. Somebody petitions to get it on the legislative agenda, and then it looks like such a boxing match to me, such an MMA tournament. Instead of people looking for truth, it looks like they're just competing with each other to like gain ground. It doesn't look like our lawmakers to me are really trying to figure out, hey, what's the right thing here? It just doesn't appear to me that that's what they're trying to do. They state honestly about how their team or their side or their party or whatever. I can tell that they have party spirit, that it's like a Little League game or like a moronic NFL game. There's no logic to it. We just want to win. And I have very little confidence in processes to produce some sort of lofty fairness when the goal is just to win and whoever ends up most empowered. Typically, it's the fattest, oldest white guy with the most money who wins. Almost always. Anyone disagree with that? It's almost always that, and it's always been that. So what makes something true? Well, some people say, like, what makes history or what makes something true is what the most powerful person declares. Because power is about being able to get you to buy their perspective, even if it differs with your perceptions. Does that make sense? That's something about power. And power is something that is a philosophical issue that got debated as early as Socrates. In the Republic, there was discussion of what power is about. So how do you get power? You actually get people to see things your way better than other people get things seen their way by lots of people. And then people that sort of resign to that. And then you'll hear people say, well, he must know, or she must know, but it's usually he must know. Because look where he is. And so people are then willing to give less status to their own perceptions and reasoning because they're going, well, what do I know?
It's like the Emperor's New Clothes.
It is. Perfect example. These things were getting talked about by these folk in the area that we think of as ancient Greece in about the 6th and 7th centuries before Christ, or before Common Era. Now, you could ask, why is it Greece? Is it just because we elevate lofty Western European kinds of reasoning and say, whoa, look, they hit on the truth because we define truth, or the best way to find it, the way we do it? Yes, to some extent. But not entirely. And then we can say, well, you could denigrate Western science and philosophy and the way that the Western European culture has it, but we put a man on the moon. We made microwave ovens. And now you can put your popcorn in a little wallet-sized package and set off the smoke detector in your dorm by some sort of radio magic in that little box. And you couldn't, when I was a little kid, I mean, I was very little, or not even born, when they first discovered that microwaves would work like that, accidentally. But it didn't get available.
Pocket chocolate.
Oh, right. But they came out, the Manna Corporation came out with what they called a radar range when I was very small. And you didn't see them in my neighborhood. I hadn't seen one until I was a teenager anyway. But here's an interesting thing. To say that all of our industrial advances, all of our cool engineering stuff, proves that ours is the good and the right way, you can turn that around and say, well, wait a minute. Do you think that the cultures that are non-industrialized are to blame for putting our habitat at the edge of livability? No. It's really only through the enterprise of this Western way of thinking that we're now going, my gosh, we might be burning our house down with us in it, because we're having trouble getting out of it. So you could argue then, so what's the superior way? And I have no defense for that question. All I can say is, this is a class in Western philosophy, not in Eastern philosophy, and not in small indigenous group philosophies. But I will just, like I said the first day of class, remind you that it doesn't mean.
I'm just wondering what sort of sources to look into research to learn more about those other forms of philosophy as well.
Oh, libraries. Libraries.
Recommendations?
Sure. You want it like an entry point?
Yeah.
Well, okay, for Eastern philosophy, I would recommend that you go to the site for the teaching company. They also sometimes go by the title Great Courses, and get the set on Eastern philosophy. It's a whole course on Eastern philosophy, and it's good, really good.
Do you know of any short and simple crash courses on it?
That's as short as you're going to get. It's not that long. It's probably 40 somewhat hours of listening. About 40 hours of listening. You can Wikipedia Eastern philosophy, but I don't think you can characterize it in. I don't know how you characterize all its aspects.
Yeah.
We're looking at Western philosophy, which we're immersed in, like a fish in water, and we're taking 4 hours a week for 10 weeks, roughly the same as that Eastern. And when we're done, we won't have a handle on Western philosophy. I mean, I won't be able to take the training wheels off my Western philosophy bicycle for decades. Pardon? Introducing you to Western philosophy. Yes. Introducing you, and that's all, to Western philosophy, so that you got a kind of a taste for it, and you're going, yeah, I kind of know where that is and where to find more about it. I mean, honestly, I don't care what your major is. When you're in college, whatever you've majored in, that's the best you can, that's what you're going to get from anything for 4 years of studying it. You can't master something in 4 years. You can't master anything in 4 years. You kind of, when you're, I don't care what your major is. If you're a biology major and you graduate, and you get your, and you got honor cords and the whole 9 yards. If I come up and I want to discuss biology with you, I'm not going to be talking to some sort of world-class biologist, and you're certainly not talking to some world-class philosopher. We're just scratching it around, getting a look at it, window shopping. We're at the mall without money, But that's good enough. There's thousands of disciplines It's hard to know the whole thing, and by the time you've looked at one, 2 more have popped up and 3 have died.
I know you can have a world-class biologist, but how can you have a world-class philosophist? Isn't it just thought? Why was one person's thought world-class and somebody's not?
Some people kind of manage to come up with ways of looking at things that a lot of people then end up going, oh, that's true, huh? Oh, I never thought about that. And there will be a problem people have been messing with. And then somebody says, oh, I got an idea. And they say, and people are going, whoa! And then that starts people off exploring in new directions. When that kind of thing happens, you're talking about a legendary philosopher. Some of the people we're talking, we almost have to limit ourselves in this class to just discussing a tiny fraction of those that are legendary philosophers, like Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Parmenides, Zeno of Elea, Heraclitus, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, Descartes, Nietzsche. I mean, we'd be lucky to do much with that many people in this many weeks. But the idea here is what I'm trying to arrange, what I'm trying to engineer, in addition to making it so you don't go, I've never heard of that guy, about a few dozen people, is to actually have some of those questions caught, to infect you with some of those questions. And many of them you've already had, but you didn't have terms for them, or you didn't realize other people in an organized way were thinking them. So some of that we can tap into. Like when we ask what's real, you've wondered sometimes, some of you, what's real? You've wondered what it is to be you when you look in the mirror. You've gone, why is it that I'm this? Yeah? When you look in the mirror, why can't I instead be like that kind of person? And then you kind of wonder, wait a minute, is that because I'm inhabiting this body? I just got this body instead of getting another? Or would it be me if I was in another body? Or is there more than one me? When you see the words coming out, you're going, no, don't say that. But you continue the sentence and you're going, oh, geez, why am I doing this? Why am I eating this? I shouldn't be eating this.
I don't know how directly this relates to what you were saying earlier. I listened to a podcast talking about the possibilities of head transplants.
Yes, and it's not just a possibility, it's scheduled for
December.
this month, next month, month after next, yeah.
Yeah.
They're serious.
And they're saying like,
And they will get it. If they don't get it this time, it's not going to be long.
right, but they're saying like not only is it risky because the person might die, but the psychological effects of having someone else's body once they wake up is devastating because their reality. Like,
Think about the
is that.
full face transplants that have been successful now, a dozen times. Full face transplants. They look in the mirror and it's someone else's face. Other than your face, what's more the way you think of you? Good. And we've got full hand transplants too. So that means we could do a hand and face at the same time probably now. And it would be routine in some hospitals now. So then that would have the same effect, wouldn't it? Or to less degree, or with less aspects maybe, but some of the same flavor of stuff.
Well, they were saying he would just essentially go crazy, like that. Once he woke up. I don't know. I
They
don't know
probably
how,
were saying that, but we're all crazy.
Oh,
The whole idea is crazy, to wake up in somebody else's body. I mean, this is a head transplant, but what about when we get to the point where we can just do a brain transplant? Take a smaller brain, put it into a larger skull, and there you go. Because somebody has brain damage, but there's a perfectly good brain in a useless body, and then you just... I don't believe... What's that?
Who would emerge?
Exactly. Because it isn't all in the brain. It's not even all in the head. If they're going to attach a person's spinal cord, it takes. How about this? What about the two sisters that are conjoined? That have two heads on one body. They have ways of perceiving things jointly, but not exactly. their selfness, they are such an interesting study in what selfhood is. But they've learned to walk and drive the car and to be relatively coordinated in athletics. Soccer and softball and all that stuff. Even though this head is controlling this arm mostly, there's still a sense of, on the other, that it's still my arm. It's kind of shared, but you got most of it. When you think about the way we are divided, we have two brains. We can cut off the commissures, namely the corpus callosum. We can cut that and have a divided brain person. And the experimentation, when you ask a person to see with a divided brain, part of, with one eye you see this, with one eye you see that, you can make it so a person can't see what's going on in the side that the other is going to do something about. If it's the left side, then it has all your speech and understanding verbal stuff and verbal reasoning is all over here. So you can have something performed by the other side and then ask the person to explain it, but that side wasn't given the information that prompted the behavior with the hands. And this side will come up with some cockamamie explanation that's not really what the reason was, but it will seem like that was the reason for doing something in response to stimuli that the other side was given through the cross eye. But you realize that what we perceive as a self is a synthesis of that going on at all times. There's a book that claims that it's only been a couple thousand years that we've actually been as well integrated as we are, and that we for the most part experienced, before about 2,000 years ago, we experienced our kind of existence on the left side, but the right side was able to communicate so we could hear it, and it sounded like something supernatural, like gods talking to us.
How do you know that? How do we know that?
The person came up with this because of, and I'll bring the book if you want to see the book. I have the book and have studied a bit, but because of the way before that time, the literature that we have from various cultures describing personal experience, it comes off to make more sense when you think of it that way, with this divided brain thing.
Does this explain biblical interactions with divinity?
People have tried to say that it does. Other people have tried to say maybe before that time, 2,000 years ago, the right brain was a place that God could use to communicate with us. And then we blurred this. It was like our onboard port for divinity to be able to talk with us, and we listened to guidance.
So then what changed?
Like consciousness. Well, the mutations that became dominant, it evolved this way. That's what that person thinks. Strange, but you and I, regardless, have got two brains. Two brains. When we're young enough, you can remove one of them and the person is more or less normal. Ben Carson pioneered hemispherectomies, pediatric hemispherectomies. You take out the whole other side. It's just missing. You don't have a left hemisphere or a right hemisphere, and then you got what you got. We got both of them. There's things you can do. You can look this up. You can find strange YouTubes and, the 3 o'clock in the morning stuff when you got something to do the next morning and you should sleep or do it, and you're screwing around on YouTube. You can find things where there's experiments you can conduct that exploit this in all of us. Yes, ma'am.
So what did the pre-Socratics think about all this?
The pre-Socratics thought about some things, wrote them down, that was lost, and now we're trying to reconstruct it based on fragments of secondhand stuff. What they actually thought about it?
Yeah.
Or were they people who had this, were their minds different?
But they're like the pillars of what we build Western
Yeah,
thought on.
yeah.
So,
Now, is that because they were just thinking same things that we are because everyone always has, or do we think those things because of the trajectory that they set us on, or both?
does it matter if I'm receiving
That question right there is huge. Just the first 3 words. What were the first 3 words? Did you hear that? Does it matter? Now, I'm going to give you a really solid answer. It depends. Some things do and some things don't. And everything, you can demonstrate where it matters a lot. And you can also demonstrate where it's a waste of time.
You mentioned how people can't see from the same perspective because
You-
people can't see from the same perspective.
Right.
because you occupy some space.
They can't do it, no.
But then that difference is almost negligible. How do you tell that that matters?
Who gets to decide what is negligible and what is a significant figure? How many decimal points do we go in percentage comparison and contrast? Who gets to decide whether it matters? If the perspective meant you couldn't see, just the angle didn't let you see whether I pulled the trigger or not.
But you just said some things matter and some things don't. So how do you know some things matter?
It depends on what's important to you. Matter means you value it. What are values?
Personal opinions.
You can have opinions about value, but value is kind of like what matters. That's up to you. It is. It is. What matters is a matter of values. And that, right, you ready for this? This is a write it down, because this is a technical philosophical term. I'm glad you raised this. The question you asked and the responses we've been going back and forth, and you've been saying matter and I've been saying values. This is a branch of philosophy that is called axiology. A-X-I-O-L-O-G. O-G-Y. A-X-I-O-L, axiology. Okay? Axiology is a study of values. And who's to say? Who is that up to? Is it just the powerful people that get their values to force other people to have to value what they value, so they start believing it? That's power. That's like having dominant people groups or a dominant person. Their values get put on other people, and other people going, I don't give a darn about that. Someone's going, you better start giving a darn. Why not? Because ultimately, if you don't care about that and you behave accordingly, I will incarcerate you. I will take you prisoner and ruin the rest of your life.
Can I buy half of my pencil back so I can write that down?
1 Kurtzdaler. Oh, well, I was going to give you the whole thing. It's got an eraser. I would need an eraser more than I need a pencil because I make more mistakes than contributions. Always have a big eraser and a small
That's why
pencil.
you're a professor.
No, I just make lots of mistakes. That's all. After discussing and arguing about what things are made out of, there became this next really important issue. Whatever it's made out of, at the smallest granular level, whatever its nature when you look at it small enough, there's another thing. Whatever those things are, and however they got made, that's a discussion and it's important, but it might not be settlable. But we can talk about it and we can have opinions about it and prefer it one way or another. However, another question is, okay, well, whatever the little pieces are, how do they relate to each other? What are the patterns with which those are arranged, and what kinds of things cause those patterns? Just saying what things are made out of is not, if you love somebody and I give you a bag of biological goo and say, here they are, you're going, that's not the way it was arranged when I saw them last. Here they are, here's a little pail, you know. Well, I promise, every atom is there. Sorry about your cat. Sorry about your poodle, whatever. That's not okay, because we want to see it arranged and according to the regular pattern. So I give you a corpse. I go, it's the same pattern, you can tell who it is. Yeah, but the pattern isn't just a still pattern. We want characteristic dynamic patterns. We want things to function according to the dynamic patterns that characterize them. In fact, people argue from the time of the pre-Socratics that the most important thing is not what it's made out of, but how it's arranged and how it is relating. You know, what are the sort of the rules or the relationships between why it moves here instead of there, and to make something that is in real time instead of a snapshot, you got a video. I hate those. Hate, loathe, hate. When you think you're going to see a video, and what you're seeing is a video of a slideshow. Incarcerate whoever did that and ruin the rest of their life. They're ruining my afternoon. Even worse, when you got to go to the next slide. Don't ever do that to me. Just play it. I don't want to have to involve my finger in it all the time. Just play it. Hate that. Well, we would hate it too if the best explanations we get are a slideshow instead of a video. And people even argued back then that it's not just a matter of, well, forget about the tiny little pieces and what they're really like that they're made out of. It's really how they work and how they're functioning that's important, the patterns and the dynamics. After moving to that step, people then said, wait a minute. What if there are no particles? All there are patterns and dynamics. There aren't any little pieces of stuff moving in certain ways. There's just the motion. That's all there is dynamics. There isn't any part. There's just patterns. There's just happenings. There are no nouns. There are only verbs. And that's where we are to splash way forward. That's what we're stuck with right now with quantum mechanics, isn't it? It's all about little patterns of patterns. There's no little pieces of stuff. You keep taking things apart, and you get down to a little bit, and then you go, what do you have? Well, if you make it hold still, it disappears.
You're talking about with so everything is a relationship thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Circle right back around to that. And so did they, the pre-Socratics. Heraclitus said, you could never step into the same river twice. Because the way it configured, an instant later, it's a different river. It's not the same thing because it's organized differently. The Buddhists today and the Buddhists 4 centuries now have said the same is true of me and you. You can't have the same person an instant later because it's completely a new person every instant.
Isn't that the new perspective on what personality and character is? It's just our personality is just our not reaction, but how we approach. Is it? It's been a while since I read it. Personality is, it's our response to other. It's how we respond to different situations, different stimuli.
That relates. That does relate. Yes. That would be a social psychology perspective, and it would be something that if you're interested in pursuing that idea further and having a little sort of an on-ramp of Buddhism in it, we want to read the works of Francisco Varela. Okay? Francisco Varela, South American scientist slash philosopher slash complexity systems theorist, nonlinear dynamics expert that died in 2005 or something like that. Evan Thompson has written a lot. That's one of his main pupils that's written a lot about him and made it friendly to the American world. Evan Thompson. Where is that going? See this? And I will give Kurt Stollers, not this class, but the next class, but if you come prepared to show me which pre-Socratic it was that said this. Okay? I don't want you to look it up now. I want you to look it up later. You can write it down and go figure it out and tell us more about it. But I'll pay you if you come back and say who this was. Okay? One of our pre-Socs said that it's not possible that there's any such thing as change. Change is a trick that our mind plays on us. It's a faulty perception. But it's not a real thing. Change can't have realness. Nothing changes. Now, some people have said that must be true because everything is God. God is everywhere. If God is everywhere, then everything is God, and God never changes. Otherwise, God would have been imperfect, because perfect doesn't just mean all just right. It means complete.
So is the trick that our mind plays on us perceiving change, like we see like that, like we'll see like something burned, like a paper, but the paper is
Just an
still
illusion.
like just the whole
Just an
phenomenon of it,
Just an
or
illusion.
or the actual paper burning, and
All of it.
Okay.
Nothing changed.
Then you said it's the same word twice.
or
It's
nothing
always the same river.
is nothing changed. and
Here's a little
nothing-
hint. This person was not in agreement with Heraclitus that said you can't step in the same river twice. So this would be the person who was his antagonist. His philosophy is antagonistic.
When you say nothing changed, you mean that whatever we're experiencing, it's not that it can change, but that it always was, and that we were experiencing it in that time?
Our experience that suggests to us that it's changed is unreal.
So like he said, paper burning, it was already burned. Our perception of it was.
It didn't change anything.
Right.
In other words, you'd have to do business with what reality is, and what our perceptions of it are, and how that relates, if you held to the idea that there's actually no change and no motion. So this person said there was no motion also. See this? Who worked this out last Tuesday? Was that you?
Yeah.
Who did that? You worked this out and you said, see, I got this. I got it all correct. And I asked you a question when you said, look, I got it fast.
I can't remember what you asked.
Okay, here's what I asked you. How would it have gone for you if there were no empty spaces? If there were actually 16 instead of 15 tiles? Now, I almost said the pre-Socratic's name, and I'm trying to make it a mystery and give some intrigue. I want so bad to say it, but I'm going to have you say it. I want to build some, who the heck is that? Because otherwise you rattle off these irrelevant names like Heraclitus, and you're going, gosh. So as a memory device, I'd like you to, who was Heraclitus arguing with, and their disciples were arguing with each other back then. This person, don't play it, this person said, are there any empty places in the universe where there's nothing? Because if it's nothing, then it doesn't exist. Because nothing doesn't exist. That means there are no holes. There's no empty places. If there's no empty places, how are you going to move something into an empty place to move something to its place? It's 16 tiles. Get it?
Mhm.
Does that make sense? That was the argument of that. What do we say about that?
There's only a problem there.
I'm trying really hard. I don't know what to do.
Even if
It's
it's
just not working.
even if it's irregular, everything has some sort of geometric to it.
Right, but we can move, even though there's air particles all around us.
At the fundamental level, though, in order to move something, you'd have to be moving it into a hole. And there's no hole, because there's 16 tiles. Otherwise, you're saying there's a place to put it where there wasn't something.
No, it's just
And
moving
if there's
from
not
here to there.
something, you have nothing, and nothing doesn't exist, so that can't be there.
No, if I move through, no. Like, so if I move through water, the water that was in front of me is
What
now
you're-
behind me.
What you're
It's just
saying,
displacement.
what you're saying is what Heraclitus said, and what Heraclitus' disciples said. Yes. And one of them in particular, a guy named Zeno, came up with a series of paradoxes. He would argue reductio ad absurdum, which means reducing your opponent's line of reasoning to horse manure, absurdity. So he would say, okay, let's say what you say is true. If that's the case, wouldn't this be the case? If we start with that and reason from here to here to here to here, we come up with crap that we all know isn't true, that can't be true. One example of that is pictured on the cover of, not that book, but the other book. One example of that is,
Yes.
here we go. This is a world-class Olympic athlete, all right? A runner, a track star, okay? We're going to have a foot race against a tortoise. But you know that he's faster than a tortoise, right? I mean, if he's an Olympic runner, don't tell me that people are, if they enter the tortoise, they're going to destroy the Olympic records. You know better than that. So we have to be fair and give the tortoise a head start. Let's draw some checkered flags here. You get the idea. So let's draw the tortoise. I am such an artist. I mean, I have no competition.
What?
Nice car there.
It's cool. No, it's a tortoise. Is that better? No, the tractor. Just pretend with me that it's a tortoise. So we're going to give him a head start. Okay? So when we fired the starting pistol, there weren't starting pistols back in that day. They had to just say, go. But because they didn't have guns. That came later. You see, this dude, in order to pass the tortoise, is going to have to actually first catch the tortoise, right? You can't pass him if you haven't caught him. Is that true? True? Okay. So what we're going to say is that here's the tortoise right here. We'll just say that's where the tortoise is right at this moment. All right? So he has to run to here. Does that happen in 0 time, or does it take some seconds or fractions of a second? It takes time. We can say that this was, we gave him, say this is a marathon, we gave him, say, a mile head start, right? We give him a mile head start. Or kilometer, whatever you want to call it. But, well, you're all set up. Now you can get through the rest of this. So let's just say we don't really know how long it takes to get from here to here. We could guess, we could say to get to where, like, to get to this spot. Forget the tortoise for a second. This is where the tortoise is. We put a stake in the ground. Okay, pole with a flag. And so this dude has to go to here.
He's not wearing pants.
That is the way.
Okay.
Do you know that
He
the
saw it,
Olympics
he did.
were? You do know that the Olympics were naked, right? Do you know what when we say I'm going down to the gym? Do you know what gym means?
So what was that insinuating for?
It means nude. Gymnos means nude.
Nobody caught.
That's it, naked. That's what gym means. A gymnasium is a nude emporium. That's what it is. It's the mall for being naked. Because people would go work out naked and other people would go look at them. That's what it was for. Well, it's not that much different when you buy a Muscle and Fitness. I mean, it's not that different. Okay, so let's just say, that to get from here to wherever we gave the student head start, let's say it takes 10 minutes to go that far. However far it is, we give them that much head start. Let's say it takes 10 minutes. So the time it takes to get from here to here is 10 minutes. All right, so the rate is this distance divided by 10 minutes. That's this dude's rate. Now this dude has less rate. The rate is a lot less. Nevertheless, in 10 minutes, do you think the turtle is still standing at the flag? No, the turtle is now here. I get to do it again. I should give it a tailpipe and some racing stuff. Okay, so now we've got the turtle in his move. All right, now, so this guy has now moved, right? So instead of the flag, we need this naked guy. You said it. So this was the start. This is where the naked guy is now. And here's where the turtle is. Let's put up another flag. Okay? So now we're going to ask, how long does it take this guy to get to here? Right? Less time. Let's say it only takes 3 minutes or whatever. Or go to there. But by the time naked guy goes from here to here, the turtle, a tortoise, isn't there. It's moved again. It's not at the flag. So now we need to start again. Real time went by. Okay, now naked guy has moved to here. Okay? Not here anymore. He used to be, but he's not. Now, we need to have naked guy run to here. When he runs to there, real time goes by. But the tortoise is no longer there. It moved. Right? Tell me where I would ever actually finish doing what I'm doing right now at some logical stopping point. I can do that forever. It's a little bit different, but it's still, there's still real distance, and he has to go that distance, and then the tortoise hasn't been holding still, it still moved.
But since the tortoise is slow, why doesn't he pass?
Because he first has to catch him. And every time he goes to where the tortoise was at a given time, from where the tortoise was the last time we talked about, the tortoise keeps moving. It moves less and less, but it still moves. And every time he goes, the tortoise goes too. He never catches it. And that, oh, I almost said the guy's name again. That was how he said, this notion of motion has got to go. You feel what? It's Taylor logic. It follows the rules of logic without breaking any. Well, I do. at least the way we understand logic, we haven't violated it.
It's the whole breaking things down.
It definitely is. Did you hear what he said? What's the difference between logic and common sense? That is a great question. Plenty.
You say plenty or three?
Plenty. Many differences between logic and common sense. Common sense is just our sense that our culture and our opinion and our perspective is correct. That's all it is. What I already believe and what I perceive my kind of people to believe, common sense allowed people to feel like great Christians while they were lynching people. Logic doesn't. It doesn't.
What does logic say about lynching people?
Well, if you would just take their set of beliefs and use logic to compare their own beliefs to themselves, internally, it would fall apart. Their belief system is internally illogical.
But what is logic if we can't come to a solid conclusion of what is right or what is wrong, or what is real or what is not?
What does it mean to be right and wrong? Isn't that cultural? Doesn't it seem right and wrong to some people, but the opposite to others? What about to people whose in a people group treachery is their highest virtue?
Are we saying that there is no commonality in human beings, no matter?
I am not. I'm not saying
Then
that.
how can you say that right or wrong is perceived culturally?
Because some cultures don't even have a notion of right and wrong. So how could you say, well, what's right and wrong in that culture? And what would make my culture more authoritative of the truth of that than someone else's culture? It seems real to them, just like it seems real to me, other than power.
So then nothing is universal across all culture?
Is it?
I'm asking.
That, what you're asking, is why anthropologists like Margaret Mead were so eager to look at other cultures. We don't know. So during the 20th century, we tried to ask that question that you're asking. Margaret Mead was married to a man who was one of the most important contributors to nonlinear dynamics and systems theory complexity. Gregory Batson. And she was contributing what you're asking, and he was reasoning things as a system. What? Margaret Mead and Gregory Batson? No. Oh yeah, that philosopher's going to be on the test. Yeah, so we're going to need the name of the one who was arguing with Heraclitus, yeah. The one who was saying, there's no empty tiles, guys. Now, keep in mind that one of that philosopher's students, one of the people in that school of thought, was Zeno of Elea. Look at the cover of your book. There's a picture of a tortoise. Zeno and the tortoise. They named your book after that one of Zeno's paradoxes. There are other paradoxes as well, similar, like the paradox of the arrow. Who would like to have a chance to understand and explain so all of us understand the paradox of the arrow next time we come together? You would like to do it?
Okay, yeah.
You already got one?
No,
Okay, so
okay.
do you want to do it?
I'll just do it, I guess.
Okay, then I'll pay you next Tuesday. Are you ready to explain Zeno's paradox of the arrow so that everyone understands what it is? Zeno of Elea, not any of the other 2 or 3 Zenos from back then and yesterday, Bill. Zeno with a Z, just like on the cover of your book. Zeno of Elea, one of the Elean philosophers. All right, from Elea, so we call him Elean. All right, so that is a really famous paradox. And the question, was it JJ that asked the question? About whether that has to do with
Was it who?
infinite divisibility? Who asked that? Did you ask that? Did you ask that? Were you the one?
Looking at me.
What's your name?
Lenny.
Lenny, did you
Sorry. My
ask
name.
the question? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Leonardo.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ask the question about can something be infinitely divisible, and that's what this has to do with? Is there a discipline that formalizes that question?
Pardon me. Can you say that again?
Is there a discipline that formalizes that question?
Physics, right?
Well, not exactly. Is there a discipline that asks that question about whether stuff can keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller? How do we deal with it as it gets smaller? No. Well, yes.
Astrophysics?
That's just adding master.
All the way back since one of the pre-Socratics, people were asking the question of how can we tell, for instance, how fast something is going in an instant? If I say, here's your rate. If I say, on your speedometer, what does it say? You're going the speed limit on the Silverado Trail, it says 55 miles per hour. 55, what, 70? No, that's too fast. Too many head-ons. If I say that I'm going 55, and my distance, how far did I travel? It was 55 miles. And how much time did it take? It took 1 hour. That's all fine as long as I keep, let's see, here we go, the distance and the time. As long as I continue to go exactly the same speed, then I can represent the distance with a straight line. Okay, the longer that goes by going this fast, the farther I go. And if I come to here and I say this is 55 miles, then that corresponds with 60 minutes. If I say, well, what about when I get to 110 miles? I can trace right to here, and how long did it take to go there? 120 minutes, 2 hours. That represents the rate in a linear equation or a linear graph. How many times do you take a trip and you absolutely, from the time you leave your driveway until you arrive 2 hours later, you had the same speed at all times? It's not real. It doesn't happen in the real world. And it turns out that real motion, we don't go from 0 to 55. Even if we have a McLaren or something, we don't do it. We have to accelerate. So it's really hard to try to figure out when it looks more like this. When it's not a line, it's non-linear. So how would I figure out at this very instant here how fast I'm going? What's my rate? How would I ever be able to do that really accurately? Newton invented the way to do exactly that, and exactly what you said. It doesn't have to do with calculus. There you go. That's what I'll pay for. Newton and almost simultaneously Gottfried Leibniz came up with something to answer that question of what the heck, because things don't actually work in a linear fashion like that. that without the notion of the calculus, without the tools that calculus gives us, we are left without an answer to Zeno's paradox. So the only reason I'm saying all that is that I want to make sure that I don't leave you with the notion that with Zeno's problem of a converging sequence, we have mathematical tools now to answer a silly question like that paradox. But it's important to note that that guy whose name I keep doing my best not to say and it almost slips out, that was Heraclitus' nemesis, arguing with him, that person was defended by his pupil Zeno to say, yeah, well, that whole motion and change thing has to be nonsense, or this would be true. Now I want you to know this technique. I want you to know the technique. It's in your book, too. It'll be in your book. Reductio ad absurdum. Reductio ad absurdum. Reducing your opponent's argument to absurdity by taking it to its logical conclusion.